Hello, everyone. Oh, it's Sam and Fee, and we're back for some musings. I think first off, I think what we want to say is we're really, really sorry that it's been quite a few weeks since we've made an appearance. I know personally, my life's been a bit chaotic the last few weeks, and with the summer holidays and stuff, it's just been. But anyway, we are back.
We're here.
We are.
I've been off
We're going
social media anyway.
you had your
I've been,
detox as well. I'd completely forgotten about that as
and you know
well.
what? I'm struggling so hard to actually get back to it now. It's kind of turned into this, I because it's really difficult now. I've got out of the habit, and it's so that's also been part of why it's just not been very visible. But here we are.
Here we are,
Back together.
still smiling. Yeah, what we were gonna chat about today is something that's causing quite a storm on social media at the minute. The Jam for Freedom Festival at the weekend, which we were both in attendance of, which was great. It was so great to be together and not be at a
It was,
protest.
yeah, for
We were
once.
so looking forward to it, weren't we?
Oh
Um,
yeah. As anyone will
we were really
know, we kind of promoted and got very excited and suggested people come along.
We did, and I mean, obviously, a Stand in the Park and Jam for Freedom. We've, for the past couple of years, has sort of worked, very closely together and supported each other, which has been absolutely brilliant. And that's sort of, how we kind of found ourselves there. Campbell invited us, so as guests with us. I mean, the premise was we were going to spend, you know. 2-3 hours in the morning, sort of giving out the wristbands or doing the merchandise and just sort of doing a hello thing. That was our sort of expectation. And it didn't quite end up like that, did it, Pete?
It was somewhat different. Yes. As Sam says, we were invited, as guests as a thank you, really, because there's so many. We've obviously promoted Jam for Freedom a lot. We've had so many jams at the stands, and so that was
Lots of
great.
nice
And that
bands.
there was
Brilliant.
a tent dedicated, a Stand in the Park tent, which was dedicated to us, in name only. It had nothing. There was never any kind of organisation of us, of what was happening or what wasn't happening much of the time in the tent. It was just a really nice sort of gesture. So yeah, we do kind of want to make that clear that we were not in any way, shape, or form associated with the organisation of the festival. Just to get that out of the way. So
I mean, it has caused a lot of polarity online. And I think, we've been sort of having a little chat. It does see there's a lot of people that had a really amazing time, which is great. And I, we both had some, really good times while we were there and made memories, and there were parts of it that, we did really enjoy. And but obviously, as probably most people have heard by now, it didn't quite go to plan. Maybe the understatement.
that could be the understatement of the year. Look, we were really struggling. We were absolutely shattered, because this was 6 days for me anyway, and my other half, and sort of recovering, and having seen, everything online, things blowing. It's, part of me was just like, oh, can we just move on? Like, let's just pretend it didn't happen. Let's just ignore. Let's put a nice big tablecloth over the elephant in the room and put a nice vase of flowers, and we'll just because whatever you say, you've already got that division that has happened, between those who were, oh well, I had a great time, and those who really, really, really didn't. And then you've got us who are in a kind of unique position, really, because we were totally behind the scenes, you know, and seeing things from very, very different perspectives, that others wouldn't. And so it's very difficult. We all want to see the best in situation, which we do, you know, to be fair, as you've said, you can't come together with all these amazing, wonderful people, even if it was an absolute, you know, whatever the situation, it was an absolute carnage, because you're with such amazing people. You are
Yeah,
going
it
to
was an amazing
have,
bunch of people.
you're
It really
going to
was.
have those fabulous interactions and just that feeling of, you know,
Yeah,
so that's going to happen. That's not kind of what we're talking about here. Obviously, the reason that we can't just like, oh, let's just forget it ever happened, is because obviously we were there, and people want to know what our views, you know, well, what all we can talk about is our personal
yeah,
experience. That's all we can do.
yeah.
We
I mean, we're not privy to sort of, you know, very much inside information in terms of, you know, what should have happened, what wasn't happened, who let who down, and all the
Oh
kind
no,
of.
I am.
There's a lot of doing. Well, I'm
I
not.
am privy. I
Are
am
you?
privy to quite a lot, and so you know, this is what, and I'm not about to be listing off all these things, but you know that there are times when you just, you know, you're, as much as you don't want to be put in a position where you're having to, it's very uncomfortable for someone like me. I'm a peacekeeper. I'm a bring everyone together, you know, but at the same
Yeah,
time,
me
I
too.
am someone that I'm deeply uncomfortable with being inauthentic or trying trying to sort of people please over and above, you know, the feelings that, so it
I
won't
mean,
give
we are in slightly
people,
different positions, because there's
yeah,
a lot of things, you know, I don't know, and personally, you know, you know, it has to be said, it is a massive undertaking, and we
oh,
toyed with the idea of stand in the
absolutely,
park festivals, and we saw how much was involved, and we kind of thought, I'm not sure we could handle it, to be quite honest, because there's
yeah,
just so much planning and organisation and things that
huge
have to be in place to make it safe, and enjoyable and all that kind of stuff, that we sort of came to the conclusion that actually
at that
it
point. We're just like,
yeah,
oh my god,
it was, this was
and
2021, 2022. We were sort of, I'm not sure we could undertake something that massive. So there's absolutely no arguments that it was a massive undertaking. Um,
but
but there certainly seems to be a lot of kind of very basic things, that really
let's
did.
be clear here, and I, you know, I'm kind of at the point where I'm going to piss people off whatever I say, no matter how balanced you try and be. You can't really be neutral on something like this. Um, it was a shit show. I would
Well,
love,
someone had to say it.
I would love to say something out. I would love to be, but I can't lie. If people want my pen, they heard it when I was there. I'm not getting into running down, being personal about anybody and going on the attack. I'm not doing that. But from an objective, as much as it's possible to be objective, it was a shit show from the moment I arrived on the Wednesday afternoon. Things were not in place. It was clear that this was, you know, just, you know, just not as it should be, by any means at all. And yes, so by Thursday morning, as many of you have seen, you know, myself, and my other half were trying to sort out the car park because there was nobody there. This is when I say we're not talking teething. Of course, there will be teething problems and mistakes that everyone would make on a first festival. Absolutely. But all the understanding and compassion in the world. Absolutely. I'm not talking about teething problems. I'm talking, like you said, the absolute basics. How can you have a festival of hundreds of people and there's not one designated person for the car park? Not one, nothing. And just vague, oh, would you mind? Well, I do actually. But for the sake of, my God, something's got to be done, getting involved with things like that, which were just not doable. But that's what we're talking, this, that's what I'm talking about. Not one ticket checked. How's that not in play? And I'm sorry, it doesn't cut it to say, oh, the volunteers didn't show up. And we're talking a handful of volunteers. This wasn't 100 volunteers not showing up. This was a tiny group of people who didn't show, and from what I could see, nothing had been delegated anyway. So how anyone would have known what they were doing in the first place? It just, miscommunication, no communication, zero organisation of any kind. I don't think winging it even covers what was going on there. And again, I don't like speaking like this. I really, really don't. But
It is very, very difficult, isn't it?
we have to be on it. And the thing is,
And I think especially as, even in his public statement, that Campbell is already talking about doing a Jam for Freedom Festival next year. And I think actually what is really beneficial is to, we're not going to go into the ins and outs and unpick it and everything, but what really needs to be done is to actually look at the fundamental things that weren't in place, and what caused this kind of domino effect where kind of everything just spiraled, from Wednesday, as you say. Before you even think about doing another one, you need to identify what went wrong, why it went wrong, and how you would go about preventing that from happening in the future, I think.
Get people in who know what they're doing. The offers were there.
Yeah.
The offers were
But
there
yeah,
from day one, from vastly experienced people. We're not a shambles of a movement.
no,
It's
we're
this
not.
idea. We've got it really, like, professional. There are awake people in every sector
There
imaginable.
are. There
And the
are.
offers were there, and they were like, no, it's all covered, when things were not covered at all. And that does get me a bit cross. I'm trying to be balanced. I am being as balanced as that is possible, but there are things that have made me really angry about this.
Yeah.
Really angry, because I've seen where they've stemmed from and how preventable. There are things that are going to crop up that are totally out of your hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get that. I'm not a harsh person. I'm actually a very forgiving person. I understand this is not what we're talking about. That's not why I'm angry. It's a total lack of care. It just, honestly, there are not enough hours to really go through. I'm over the moon for people that did have a good time, because you're amazing people are going to have a good time and make the best of it. Yes, and I'm so glad. And there were brilliant times when the musicians finally got on. Incredible, brought the house down. It was amazing, and the concept was fantastic.
Yeah.
What
Absolutely.
Campbell put together as a concept was absolutely brilliant. The
The
talent
execution.
there,
No,
it was great.
absolutely.
It was the execution that is the issue here.
Yeah.
And you've got things like, okay, the stage, from what I can gather, I'm not getting into hearsay and all of that. All I'm saying, from what I can gather, that was down to the company that really fucked up and should be held to account. I'm not going to go there. That happened yet. Nightmare. Oh my God. but there's a way of rallying from that. When 2 days
There is.
later, things are
There is.
still, and that's
And
what I'm
you know,
saying about knowing you're having that capacity to, you've got to have contingency plan. And actually, and what I was saying as well is, you know, we really can do, and we're really like, yes, we can do. Why not just like, oh my God, get on the mic. This has happened. This show is damn well going to go on. Who's with me? You know?
would have been away.
Get it, and
Yeah.
everyone would have, and that was entirely absent.
And but there were, I mean, there were a hell of a lot of people who kind of stepped up and stepped
Oh
in
my
and
God.
run around like blue ass flies, you know. Yeah, I know you were one of the, yeah, you were one of them, and I found myself in that position too.
Yes,
But
which is not, you know, we're not saying, oh, how one, you know, but it was like, oh my God, we've got to do this. Or we very much took it upon ourselves as well to get, you know, to get as involved, which is why I looked half dead for a lot of it. I had people coming up like, are you all right, Fee? Like, I'm not sure, because, you know, we want these things to succeed. We
yeah,
want, you know,
absolutely.
but you know, you do have to, would this kind of, this level of fiasco that many of us, you know, saw from, you know, firsthand, would that be just, oh well, you know, it's the first, if that was just it, within any other, if it was just a public, you know, festival that the
Yeah,
normally pub, no. So there are standards. I think what the issue is when you're talking, when you're charging that amount of money, I'm not getting into that whether people should be making money or not. That's personal opinion. I'm not talking about, but there's a certain level that you've got to ensure is delivered, because that's a professional, you know, you're expecting professional deliver. Things will go wrong, of course they will. There will be, we're not, I, for the millionth time, we're not talking about that. We're talking about basic fundamental infrastructure not being there from the get-go. That meant it was never ever ever going to be able to go to plan in a million years. And like I said, that's because we were on the inside of things. And I don't want, I will not needlessly run anyone down, or, you know, you've got to be philosophical as well, or I always am. And, you know, there are lessons there are for all of us, many of us personal. I think, you know, things happen for a reason. I don't know. We so didn't want to have to say, put anything out there full stop, because
yeah,
there's that element of just let everyone argue amongst themselves, you know.
definitely.
But we've got to be honest about our experience. We've been really excited ourselves, you know. If I had, I have all the sympathy in the world for people who were turned away. This should never have been happening. To spend,
No, and I think that is
actually,
the worst of it
it
is
makes me want to cry. I've actually felt really, I can feel myself, because the idea of people being that excited
yeah,
and spending money aside from the ticket. So many of us are struggling. We don't have money for, you know,
no,
and people have, it's been their holiday, and it's
yeah.
been the one
There's, you know,
thing
it's
for
not just the
kids.
tickets,
You
is it?
can't tell people don't be negative or be, oh, it's teething. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to come down quite hard on that, because I've seen a lot of this in comments and things. And as I've said, if you've had a good time, I am genuinely over the moon. I really am, and I don't want to take that from you. That's amazing, thank God. And it shows how we can have a good time no matter what. But on the other side of things, there are very, very valid reasons for people being aggrieved about this.
There are,
There
and
are.
I do think, you know, from, you know, the festival, for what it probably looked like for people who were, you know, perhaps not privy to the absolute chaos that was going on, trying to sort of organise the tents and the acts and sort out a lot of the problems that were there. You know, it probably was very different to when you actually saw, because it was very, very chaotic, kind of behind the scenes. And one of the things that really, really struck me um, was a certain level of what appeared to me to certainly be a kind of disrespect to a lot of the acts. You know, there were acts there that, you know, had not just a couple of hours either. They had spent hours kind of waiting for their opportunity to get on. One band in particular were there for 6 hours waiting around, and when I say disrespect, I mean that there was no
No
real
care.
kind of chain of command and communication
No.
towards these people to let them know, you know, what was happening and how what the issues were and how they were going to be resolved. And it was the lack of communication and the lack of care for all of these acts that had come in. They were all very confused. They were all kind of, you know, just had no idea what was going on. They had no idea whether they had a waiting area that they could sit in or so anything like that. And they were very, very frustrated, understandably. And then I think, you know, it had, obviously the delays in the afternoon had a massive knock-on effect. And there were a lot of acts that then found their slots, their acts, you know, significantly shortened, because it was trying to, at this point, kind of fit everybody in. And I think that was one of the things that really struck me was
Well,
was
the
that
yeah,
aspect of it.
yeah, and the you know, the issue is, as thing, yeah, you know, the stage, you know, that was a major, you
It
know,
was a major
wow.
deal.
But had there been people in place to deal with such things, because we've got some good brains in our heads, you know, we're like, yeah, we can deal with it. But because that wasn't in place, you had hours and hours and hours of nothing, which you've got all these people hanging around. Get them on, even if it's just here. There should have been music playing constantly, something going on. But again, there's a certain level of, you know, there's that capacity to think ahead and to do, which was entirely missing. And, you know, it was left to a bunch of people who were not there to be organisers, that were having to take this upon themselves just so there was something, you know. And that's not how it should have been. And the buck, I'm sorry, it does stop very firmly with
Yeah.
the organizer, uh whatever, you know, it does there. And it pains me to say this, you know, it does, because we don't like, as a stand in the park, we were talking about this earlier, we're a stand in the park is sort of a movement in well, it is a movement, it's a collective in itself. So it's never been about, hey, I'm FiFi and I have all these followers. No, it's not about me. Obviously I started it, but it's about the people that make up it's ours. It's a stand in the park. And so obviously I've got my opinions, as people will know. But it's never been, oh, well, you have to be in agreement with her in order to
No.
have anything. No, not at all. And I don't expect people to, everyone's got their own reality, their own experiences. So I don't expect anyone to be sitting there going to everything I'm saying here. All I can talk about is my lived experience. There are going to be some opinions and views in there, but this is why it's been so difficult, because there you do get that division. We're always conscious of not wanting to needlessly stoke
No, absolutely not.
fires,
And
and
yeah.
and get into that, because, you know, we're all about unity. But there does come a point where you have to raise your head above the parapet. And as much as we'd like to say we don't want to get involved, How can you? That would be totally inauthentic. But I'm telling you, we've been tortured over this. We've been really struggling. I've been awake at night thinking, how do we talk about what went down here? Because whatever you say, though, there are people who have not had that experience at all, and you're going to get attacked for it, and it, which, you know, it's been very interesting for me to see all of this about myself,
Yeah.
you know, that I can be a bloody wimp. I can be a wimp when I don't want to be shouted at and argued with.
No,
And, you know,
no.
both of us, we don't like confrontation,
No, we don't. No, I hate it. I
even though
absolutely
we've
hate
got
it.
strong opinion, you know, but at the same time, we're not, we're also not walkovers who will cover stuff up for the sake of our own, you know. But it's been difficult, it's been really difficult, because you know, you're put in that position where you've got all this division going on, and but I do think there is a middle way. I do think there can be that balance, as well, because I'm not going to tell people they're wrong for having had a marvelous time. I'm bloody ecstatic. And
And equally, people shouldn't be giving those who have not had a good time and who are actually very unhappy, angry, frustrated because they have not been delivered the festival that they were
yeah,
promised, and in some cases haven't even been able to get into the festival. You know, I think at the same time we can't run
no,
those people down. I think, well, I was all right, I had a great time. You know, there's some very valid experiences that you know,
there
we also need.
are. It's not either or, and I think this is what we're seeing, and it's in the world at large, and we're seeing it play out here. That refusal to let people have a different experience to yours without telling, oh no, well that's not true, well that's not what, because I didn't. No, no,
Yeah.
that's being like, come on, people, let's just, you know, accept that, you know, we're so different. You've got
Yeah.
people who are like, hey, great, and they'll have a fab time, you know, they're different. We can't expect people who are not totally laid back to be laid back, and there's some kind of failing on them if they're not, and also in reverse, you know. So whatever's happened has happened. This is just a little bit of our insight, our sort of opinion. People will obviously agree or not, it doesn't matter. We've just felt like we can't sort of
Keep quiet and shuffle away.
sweet, like, oh, let's just forget this didn't happen. We can't, because we were there, and we can't make up things about how it was or how it wasn't. This has been our experience, and I'm not going to go any further into sort of analyzing and picking apart. It's just, things were not in place that absolutely needed to be, and we were encompassing everything, yeah, every aspect. And so we've got, you know, got all of this, but I hope, you know, we can just, everyone gets refunded that needs to be. You know, God knows how that works when not even one ticket was checked. Mind blown. But yeah, you know, so
I mean, I
there
did
we go.
say sort of afterwards, and it's become apparent, you know, through reading the comments and everything on social media, that it is very much a tale of two festivals. That you've got,
Absolutely, yeah.
you know, you've
And they're
sort of got,
both
you know, a lot of
true.
different
Yeah.
experiences.
And they're
Um,
all real.
yeah,
Everyone's experience is real, and that's the thing. We don't need to argue about who's in the right, who's in the wrong, blah blah blah.
I think,
Um,
you know, the bottom line is we can all agree that actually, you know, it wasn't exactly as it was sold to be, and there were probably, you know, multiple and various reasons for that. And that there were good times and there were not so good times. Um, and it, you know, it's very much a case of it's what's done is done. Us all kind of expending untold amount of energy, kind of arguing about who's right and who's wrong and whose fault it was, and you know, all the kind of unpicking every aspect of what happened and why is probably not going to get us anywhere. I mean, Campbell did
No,
say yesterday he's going to release, you know, accounting and stuff like that to put certain people's minds at rest, to allay these sort of accusations that, you know, he was out to make money and stuff. And perhaps that's the right thing. If he feels that's the right thing for him to do, it may sort of subside some of this. And you know, I think we do kind of you know, have to give validity to everybody. And I think the one
yeah.
thing we can take away from it is that actually it was the people that made the festival.
I think
The
that's
the
one thing
people
we can
that
all agree on, and that's including
absolutely,
the act, you know,
the acts, the
because
people that
you know,
volunteered,
to
you know,
still go on
everyone
and
who
put
volunteered.
on these incredible sets,
Yeah,
and it just shows like people that, you know, it doesn't take much like to change the atmosphere and to raise it up, you know, and that's so, thank God, you know, these are brilliant performers that have
there's a lot of
managed.
talent, a lot of very,
Yeah,
very knowledgeable, insightful, interesting people within our movement. We've got a lot of kindness. I think that's, you know, come out that even people that are unhappy, and angry and frustrated are still showing a level of compassion and understanding and kindness towards, you know, other people. And I think it says a lot about the people that make up this movement,
it
you know, for the
does.
kind of, you know, the way everybody has sort of pulled together at the festival, everything that was on offer, the amount of people that were there, and you know, how just incredibly bloody lovely everybody's been, to be quite honest. And
Yeah,
I
it's
think
well,
for me that's going to be the biggest thing I take away from it, is that we are very, very blessed to have some incredible people within our movement, and we should
yeah,
be
we
really, really
really
proud of
are.
who we are.
Yeah, and maybe that's, you know, for some of us, that is the takeaway. Nothing happens in life that isn't supposed to, in that sense, no matter what it is, you know, and there are always the silver linings, and that's not to diminish any of the
I know,
darker side, but there's always something to be taken away from this. And it was just, you know, it was so lovely to see everyone, and
yeah,
to, you know, it was to be among in that, it could have been, it should have been absolutely epic to have those people and all that talent. It didn't happen for all the reasons that we, well, some of the reasons that we've kind of laid out, that we've seen playing out. But all the potential is there, and
there's a lot of
lessons
potential.
100% learned. And it's like we said, sometimes these things happen in order to pave the way for better better times, you know. But again, that is not to diminish people that have had a really like quite traumatic experience, some of them, and I just, my heart goes out, it really, really does. um but we've survived. We've survived, you know. We don't want this to be a really negative thing that we're spreading, and being, but like I said, you got to be honest, you got to be honest about stuff, and authentic, even if it sort of it's very uncomfortable, because you don't want to be saying stuff that might be
Yeah,
perceived as nasty. It's not with that intent at all.
no, not at
It
all.
really
Not
isn't,
at all.
honestly. As you know, we were more excited than anybody.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, so it's a balance of stuff. There were things that are always beyond someone's control that you have to be compassionate about, and things that aren't, that you have to be right. maybe some tough love is needed here.
Yeah.
That's our piece. That's it now. That's where we are. So yeah, I mean, we who knows when we'll be back for another musings. I'm trying to just get myself back on social media, like drag myself out of my what has been a lovely little respite sanctuary away from it all. Yeah,
Yeah.
you
I'm
can run
dealing
but you
with,
can't hide.
well, massive, enormous changes in my life that
And
are
dealing with them
incredibly
beautifully,
stressful. And
I would say.
you don't see me when I'm hiding under my bed, in tears. But yeah, no, we'll keep plodding along. I think everybody's got something right now they're dealing with, and but keep plodding on to me.
We do indeed. We do indeed. And we don't let things knock us for long, whether it's in our personal lives or with all of this, we've got each other. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. We have whatever's going on, we've got each other to lean on. So there we go. Lots of love to y'all. And yeah, we will catch up hopefully very soon. So,
Lots of
speak
love
to
to
you
everyone.
soon. Take care.
Yeah, bye.